it was paining you because I was like talking and I was like, he seems like he's hurting. I don't know what's happening.
I couldn't hear you at all, and it was the time delay was killing me. So we're gonna.
Oh man, no worries, man.
All right. Welcome back. I'm sorry about that, everybody, and sorry about that. Yup, but let's get back to business here. So, you were saying about how you're relatively new to model building.
Yes, I started back in October. I basically got into the Gundam shows because I do this thing with anime a lot where I watch huge chunks of it, like whole franchises in a go. You know, I did all of Dragon Ball, I did all the Digimon shows, and then I was looking for something else, something big, and I was looking at Gundam going, there's like 45 years of show there. Like there's a lot of show there. And I didn't realize what I was getting into. And then I was walking and I started getting into the show. I'm watching the episodes on Funimation. And then I'm in my Target and I see one of these Gundam Breaker battle log kits. Okay, and I pick up the American type and the just the plain entry grade because I wanted to start with the entry grades, and it's been I just fell in love. I immediately loved the process of what was happening. I didn't have the right tools for the first one, of course, but you don't need them for the entry grades. It's just like, kind of like you can just be like monkey it. You can be like and but it still works and it looks great. And then it's the bug, it bites you the minute you build the first one. I feel like you just start going, unless you start with a bad one. I've heard of a couple people starting with bad ones, but starting with grandpa there, starting with the RX-78, you can't go wrong. He's my absolutely favorite of the Gundams. Like, I know that sounds super cliche that like, oh, my favorite is grandfather. They're like, oh, is your favorite Goku too? And you're like, yeah, but you know, it's because he's cool, you know.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying what brings people in. I personally am a huge RX fan.
It's the colors, man. Yeah. It's just like, it's like perfect, you know, like, and the separation and the way he just looks, it's so classic. It just, it works so well, you know.
You're right. And, you know, you touched base on something there. Two things would have been, first, you didn't have the proper tools. And second off would have been, you know, that you got bit by the bug. So talk to me a little bit about the tools. What did you start out with? What were you working with on your bench when you first started? Like that
when I first started,
home, you know, were you working with nail clippers and the wife's nail file?
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. That's actually a good, it's like, that's what my ideas went to after I built the first one. The first one, I built it and you know, it said no tools, and I was kind of just like, okay, you know, and you just build the entry grade, and it snaps together. That's why I always recommend that to people who are starting.
Oh yeah, the entry grade are fantastic kits. Like I love that entry grade line.
Oh just man, the simplicity. I love it. I have a strike sitting here right now being like,
oh, perfect. I got new sitting in my backlog waiting to go. Yeah,
it's pre-ordered. I pre-ordered it a little bit taller than the RX.
So, yeah. But yeah, so you just kind of snapped together the first kit like it came.
Yeah, like it came. But then I immediately was like, okay, so I need other things. And you know, my wife's into crafts, so we had X-Acto knives. Mm-hmm. But the first time I tried to panel line something, I used a Sharpie, you know, like nice. I broke out a thin tip Sharpie because I don't know if a lot of people are like this. They went on YouTube after they built the entry grade and they went, okay, what else? You know, like what else is out there? And I found
that bug you spoke about,
right? The bug, and I found Mecha Kakaitsu. I don't know if you've watched him on YouTube. He's pretty huge, like YouTuber, and I loved his reviews, and it shows off, you know, it lets me know what to get, you know, like, so I was like really into that, of it being like, okay, cool. That now there is some that aren't worth building, you know, like some are that just a pain in the butt. And then you learn them by actually making them. You're like, oh yes, he was right. That was a pain in the ass to make, you know, like you're like, yes, exactly. But like you learn the good ones, you know, and you're just like, okay, all right. And I wanted to be that for other people too, you know, like help get people to the right kits, because you know, like there is so much out there, you know, and you want to get the right stuff. You don't want to waste your money, because a lot of kids aren't my age, you know, doing this. Like, you know, I taught, you know, like there's a lot of people doing this hobby who are very young and they don't got no money, and I get that because I don't got no money, and you know, like I'm just dumb, and you know, that's how you get piles like this. But it's like it's helpful to this whole community to be like, hey, this is good, this is bad, you know, like,
absolutely.
And I really got into his YouTube, and then of course it took me to Instagram, and that's when I saw everything that was going on Instagram with Gunpla.
The world opened up.
It really did. I was like, oh, like it started to click for me that I could, I work at video production in real life. That's what I work at ECAS Productions in Alston, Boston, and shout out. And I do live event production. So I cut webcasts and, you know, actual live events, and I actually professionally produce podcasts. But you know, I can't slap my name on it because it's not mine. But you know, like it's but I do my podcast on the side. So it's like
absolutely,
like, you know, well, whatever. And I just
just to stop you there for a second, you know, you should be proud of that. If I'm not mistaken, 120 episodes in.
Yes, over 120. I think we did 126 was the last episode.
So anybody listening, anybody who's just coming into the world of Frank here, 120 episodes of a backlog for you to go back and check out. Take your time, check it out.
It's called the Warp Shelf Podcast. We're on the so I do a website called galaxyofgeek.com, where we cover the galaxy of geek stuff. You know, everything. I call myself an omni nerd. I'm into everything, man. It's like, look at this shelf. Look what, you know, like it's just like I'm into a lot of stuff. And I thought Galaxy of Geek covered that. And you know, I'm on there with a couple other writers and stuff like that. But I am one of the main content creators on there. And our podcast, The Warp Shelf, is on there where you can see it in its video form or in any audio form. And basically, it's the way I sum it up is we tell you if it's worth buying hard, you know, if it's worth buying physical. Is something that you're watching or are you know, playing or TV, anime, whatever, is worth owning actually in the physical, which is kind of a very simple way to say that we spend like an hour deconstructing something. Both of us went to film school and we like film criticism, and we really get into nitty gritties on things. And you know, it gets personal sometimes. You know, I tell about, you know, the hurt that I feel, you know, like sometimes on there, but you know, that's not you know, it connects to what the story's saying. So you know, it's all about letting you guys know why it connected to me, you know, and why you should give certain media a chance, you know, like that's I try to be as positive as possible on there.
I think that's some of the things, like I'm familiar with your work, you know, I finding you early in my Gundam career, we'll call it my hobby, which is not very old. Some of the things that really like spoke to me was I saw some of the things in your work or in your choices of kits that represented the same inspirations that I had. And nice. I said, I can see this, right? You can see when somebody has those. One thing I love about your podcast, and everybody go check this thing out, is you guys are intelligent viewers, right? Like when you're talking about something in which you're asking your audience to purchase, or you're asking them to take your perspective of whether it's worth it or not. The fantastic part for me is I can trust the educated not that you have the background for it.
Yeah,
just
right.
You guys are intellectual viewers. You know, you're not,
but you know,
right. I believe when you tell me about something that there's a little bit of thought behind it, right? You have some experience in it, and you've definitely done some deeper than the surface level thinking about it, and I love that. Right?
You know,
Yeah.
like I can't. It's like I take in this stuff, and I'm just sitting there like. And I know we've already talked about mental health already, and we're going to keep bringing it up.
Absolutely,
probably a couple more.
Yeah.
Is that like I don't have any diagnosis, but it's like I know that I have OCD, probably passed down from my father, and that leads to ADHD tendencies. So I'm most of the time when I'm watching something, it's like 5 layers deep all the time. You know, I'm sitting there being like, okay, I'm watching the production. What are they trying to say with this plot? You know, like, is that actors are they doing a good job? How are they lighting the scene exactly? How are they accomplishing what's happening on screen? You know, like it's all the time just like deep thought, and you know, like that's why I enjoy that stuff. You know, I can sit down and really let loose, you know, like with media.
Absolutely. And you know, I feel like I'm the same. Like I tend to I'm a huge Star Wars geek, right? So I tend to like overanalyze everything Star Wars. I'm Batman till I die, right? So
there we go. We used to do a podcast called Real Books Don't Have Batman. The same me and Deshaun. We did a Batman podcast. And we used to interview comic book guys, and that was more of the show. And when we kind of stopped reading comics in single issue form, we kind of changed what we were doing. But we love Batman. This whole shelf right here is just Batman until the Green Lantern bit there, which I just love. You know.
So if you had to kind of sum it up, what would you think? What's the most inspiration? Where are you drawing the most inspiration from? Or is it media like movies and anime? Are you looking at graphic novels? Like when you go into a shop, what's catching you?
So when I'm going into it, so one of the I was trying to say about the chunking up like Mobile Suit Gundam, and of course I've already like shoosh tangents, but I've watched every English dub Mobile Suit Gundam show now, and I love them all. I can absolutely say that it went from being like, oh yes, I like these certain animes, and then I went, nope, Mobile Suit Gundam is my favorite anime. You know, like this is like absolutely no question. This whole series like tickles something, you know, like, and you're just like, and I think that comes from as a kid I grew up watching Godzilla, and I always loved the craft of the tiny cities, and kaiju, you know, like it's just kaiju, like kaiju is dope. And so I've always known Gundam existed, so to like finally get into it, really love it. And I really love how serious they take the UC universe in particular, of course, and how, you know, basically this is like robots with war crimes, and you know, I'm cool with that. You know, it you know, leads to complex characters and a really complex series, and I think that's great. So I've crushed all these series. So when you're saying main influence, I try to look at the Gundam shows. I try to look at my favorite movies. When I'm thinking about these images, that's my main thoughts is I want to build a cool Gundam from a cool Gundam show. You know, when I'm in the shop, I'm just like, okay, what's my favorites? You know, like I'm not going to buy something that wasn't my favorites. I'm not a Gundam Seed guy. I thought it was cool. I did. No, please don't hate me. Guys, and Wing, I'm not a huge Wing fan, but don't hate me. I love them. All Gundam good. Thumbs up. All Gundam good. But
more Gundam's good Gundam, right?
Yes, more Gundam's good Gundam.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as we were saying last night in your stream. I was like, more Batman is good Batman. Like everyone's always like, wait a minute. So there's the Patterson Batman. There's Michael Keaton's going to be in the Flash movie, and you have the guy playing Batman in the audiobooks, and you're like all at the same time, and you're like, yes, Yes,
Absolutely.
you're like, give me the animated show too.
Right.
Give me
Give me
Kevin
another
Conroy.
one.
You're like, let's
Yeah.
go. They're producing it. It's coming soon. It's
Oh,
coming soon.
amazing.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited. They got Bruce Timm attached, and that's all I need to hear. Like
Absolutely, right?
I'm just
Absolutely.
I'm like, okay, you got me. I'm in. So yeah, I mean, so I'm a guy who deep dives on comics. So it's like I'm a big visual language guy. And when it comes to films, I like it when we show and don't tell as often. That doesn't happen in many movies where if sometimes it's very like, did you miss that? Let me tell you.
Yeah. Let me tap you on the forehead for a second.
Let me V8 like knock you to tell you a point I made in that I could have made visually. Like which I'm not. As a guy who works in production, I understand so much. I'm just I get that. Why you explained that. Like I get why you had to do it because the producers are sitting there going, "Is the audience going to get that?" And you're like, "I'm sure they will." And then the producer's like, They ain't gonna get that, and you're like,
not gonna get it.
I guess we got to shoot the scene where we explain what we just showed in 2 seconds. But okay,
and I think that's part of maybe what sunk you into the series and as a whole. You're right. There's 35, 40 years of anime to follow up, but it's a mature anime as well. It's not like I love the storylines, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not the biggest on every line of it. I've more come into it as I found the models. So the models to me spoke about a lot of things that reminded me of my childhood, right? Terminator, Transformers, like Michael Bay through my 20s. Like these are things. So when I see them, I flash on these inspirations that I have.
Nice.
And so through that, I've obviously hit the YouTube. I've found the people I love, and I've seen hundreds of just scenes. So my bad because I'm not following like everything about it, but they just blew me away.
I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I watched all of it. It was just sitting down building Gundams while watching, like, and it's all of a sudden you're just like powering through Gundams, like
absolutely
because it's on screen. You're like, okay, and and I think you're right though. You buy the Gundams, and then you go, and then you're watching the show, and you're like, "Oh, I'm building one badass Gundam."
Absolutely, like Sin killed me, right? I didn't have a real idea of what like Synergy would be like until I watched it, and I was like, "Man!" And a Mame Ghost was one. No idea.
Man,
saw the kit, loved the kit. I was like, "Man, do I want to do a 3-tone gold on this?" And that's what got it to bring me home was this like idea.
That's where you're on the borderline, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I just watched that literally last week. I just watched the first part. They have the English dub on Funimation.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I thought it was great. I love when they're like, Sunrise is like, okay, it's not Gundam, but it might be Gundam. It might be Gundam.
Might be Gundam. Exactly.
You're like, I'm okay with that. I don't know how I feel about the AI. I think they kind of like, I kind of like them because they're cute, but also you're kind of like, it's rough, you're just like, it's a little rough at times,
And I think that's where just seeing the battle scenes, I need to sink a little deeper into it, but
it's worth the watch. But it definitely has some like, okay, this episode we put away the Kenbu, and what's going to happen for the rest of the episode, something emotional, and you're like, okay, I see where we're going. Everything's very telegraphed, and if you can get past that, it's a fun show. But it's very like, it's very Sunrise being like, we know how to write a mecha show. How dare you tell us how to write a mecha show? I know how to write a mecha show.
I know how to do it. Absolutely. So we've spoken a little bit about like what gets you a kit. Maybe talk to me a little bit about your photos on Instagram and the material you're putting out, because it's very nature driven. Is that something that's always been a big impact in your life? Like, has nature always played a huge role in mental health and in your life, or is this something that's kind of grown with the Gunpla?
Well, it's funny because the photography aspect, I was shooting videos all through high school. And then when I went off to college, I discovered photography also. And I really fell in love, and I was doing a lot of portrait photography, like at the end of college and after college. And I was really enjoying that, but I kind of got corporate and did corporate video. And I do a lot of, I work with really cool equipment. I get to cut cameras all day, so I have nothing to complain about, but it is very, it's corporate. And so it's fun to do something completely creative with my art. And I have that background of doing portraits of people, and I was really enjoying that stuff. You can go back on my YupFrank Instagram and just kind of scroll back, and there's a bunch of portrait photography. And then I switched to kind of landscape photography for a bit. And I love landscape photography. I've done, me and my wife did a trip across the country, just taking photos and experiencing the country when we were graduating college. And I got a great art project out of that. And I really enjoy photography for it's like able to capture a moment type of thing. Of course, I love video, like you're like, that's cool. Now do 24 frames of that a second, like, you're like, that's cool. But that's how I was during college. I was like, photography is only like 1 frame. I like 24 frames.
I need all 24 of them.
Yeah, right. Give them all. Give me 48. And then I was that's like, no, not 48. We don't want the Hobbit. None of that. But we, with photography and taking it outside, I of course was seeing people on the Gunpla Instagrams, like there's I think everyone sees Brick Lego like 187. I don't know what his numbers are after there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
He's like but he just always was taking outside and taking these incredibly fantastic photos. And then there's also a bunch of other fantastic artists doing outdoor stuff. I was really blown away by them able to like seal away the scale, like you're it's same as like a Godzilla movie where you're like, I'm not looking at a scale model, it just is, it's the shot. So I was really into that of like trying to get, I didn't want to do scale models because, and I still kind of, I wanted to dip my hand into dioramas and like scale surroundings for the Gunpla, but I'm just not there yet. And I really enjoyed taking it outside and doing my photography thing of chasing the light to get the right light on somebody's face to take a great photo of them, so it's the same thing with Gunpla, but you can pose them completely. You don't have to be like person. Move your arm or leg a little bit, like trying to pose them, or if it's a model, they know exactly how to pose themselves and you don't have to freaking work. No Gunplas like that. It's like, I learned that pretty quickly.
Yes.
You can't just
that damn arm's going to fall off every time.
Well, it's like, you can't just lay them down, like they are definitely something that you have to add some like animated feel to it, like this like they're doing something, like, because then they come to life.
They're incredibly static if they're just
and which is also really cool about it. I mean, one of the English shows that I watch, of course, is the Build Diver shows. I watched all the Build Divers and the Build Fighter shows, which is not everyone's cup of tea. We were saying very serious Gunpla. This is like, nope, you build Gunpla and you make them fight. And but they always do shots of them holding it all like straight and like narrow, like they can't move or something like this in your hand. And something about that also is super dope, like that these robots are so detailed, so great, and you can still be like, I can grip this guy, and that's just awesome.
Absolutely. But
yeah, I mean, mental health wise, it's about getting outdoors. It's about getting that vitamin D. It's about and also with this I've realized that I have to get down and lay down in the dirt to really get the photos I want, because I have to get like really low. And, there's something to that too, like not often are you going outside and being like, I'm going to just go lay in the grass for 20 minutes. And I pretty much do that, like once or twice a week, come back, either go out at night, or with recent photos, I've been going out in the morning or at sunset to try to get nice photos.
Yeah. Well, you said chasing the light. So, I assume and with your photos, of course, you're using natural light for all of them. So none of these are staged. You're not taking photos inside. So I'm assuming you're rolling pretty light. What are you taking your photos with? Like, what do you have a camera that is your favorite? Do you have a everyday driver? Like, what do you work with when you're taking your photos?
So when I was doing my landscape photos on Frank, I was using my Sony A6000, and that's my number one great recommendation to people is the Sony A6000 line, because it's great in all lights. It's so small that you can put a tiny lens on it and shove it in your pocket, but it is a full DSLR with a chip. That's great. But then I bought a phone that's called the Google Pixel XL3, which is still very old now, which has about the same sensor size as my Sony A6000. And I kind of just went, I'm not going to break out the DSLR for this. And I've kind of fallen in love with trying to trick this son of a bitch to take nice photos.
Isn't that part of the fun?
It's part of the fun of it. Because it's kind of like, it's kind of like using, I got some old cameras up there, it's kind of like using film where you're like, I know you're not exactly supposed to be able to do macro photos, but I'm going to make you do it. And, and that's what I've got. That's what I've been doing, is using my Pixel here. And I think it's great, actually. It looks really nice most of the time. I of course want to upgrade. I'm like, okay, if I really want to believe in my photos, I'll like get a 6 or a 7, or if I think there's a 7 coming out soon, but I know there's a 6, and and that would be like, oh yeah, now I've upgraded the photo. But I take the phone out. I bring out I have a tiny Lume Cube light. It's about this big. It's about the size of your Steam Deck or something like that. And it's it's just great light. It's very natural looking. I use it as my kind of softbox, like my big light, my big key light. And then I have 2 newer, that's the brand. Sorry for anybody. I'm saying that not for you, for anybody watching, or listening. And I use 2 of those that do colors to do my my offset and my rim light on the back of their heads. So, and then I use, for a lot of my nighttime photos, I bring out a tiny demister, and I kind of throw the light through the mist, like a horror movie or something, and throw some color through it, and get some cool things. I got this horror right here behind me that I built that I haven't. That's the next thing going up on my Instagram after the Zaku. And I got some really cool, looks like it's like colored smoke coming up behind them shots.
Amazing. And just a shout out to any of our viewers who are just getting into this, right? If you're just getting into this hobby and you want to take photos, we have a professional here telling us that the best photo he can take is the one with the camera that's in his pocket already.
Exactly. I think that's Ansel Adams who says the best camera you can have is the camera you have on you. And I mean that in the most wholehearted way. Some people gear chase their entire lives. They'll be like, oh, I got to get this better camera. I can't take nice photos till I get this better camera. No. This is about lighting. This is not about your camera.
Right.
Don't worry about that. Spend 30, 40, 50 bucks on getting some nice small lights, and you'll see a jump in your production. And I did. And I think that's one of the number one things I love about this is I get to kind of set up this tiny shoot and pose this
Mhm.
thing and do my art in multiple ways, because I get to do my photography and now I get to build something with my hands, a gunpla. Like I always used to joke that these hands don't work for anything. I can't paint. I can't, like draw. I can't do anything like that. But then all of a sudden, I can build a gunpla, and it
Mhm.
feels like art when I'm
Mhm.
able to like panel line, paint, put on decals now, and it's like its own little art piece. And that's why I'm so supportive of it to everybody online, because I know how hard it is to do this stuff, like, and you learned and you put the effort in, and I appreciate that for literally everybody making gunpla. You're like, wow, look what you did. Like this is crazy. In a world where constantly they're like, yeah, don't make art. We can make art with tiny little robots, and I love that.
Yeah, this community is something that I never would have thought that this community existed like this, right? Like,
right.
yeah,
Right.
I think in my entire time, and again, I haven't been doing this super long, I think I've maybe had like 2 people react negatively to something, right? 2 people out of thousands. And I wanted to give you a quick shout out because I know that you reached a bit of a milestone today on Instagram. So I wanted to give you a shout out, buddy.
Thanks,
Congratulations on 2,000 followers. Well worth it. You're
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's insane, because I have now passed my normal Instagram, the YupFrank Instagram, which is my personal one,
Yeah.
Which I've worked on since like college. So over almost 10 years now. It's only got like 1,300 people on there. So to like reach 700 more on something that I didn't like, I don't mix them, because I don't think they really go super well together, like it's just kind of like, okay, that's my other art. Same thing with the Warp Shelf. I don't bring it up often on the YupGundam thing, because we don't talk about Gundam that often. Deshaun hasn't watched it yet, so it's kind of one of those things that we just haven't done the dive on the show. And so that's why I don't promote it on there. People are always like, oh, you got a podcast too? And I'm like, yeah, but it's not Gundam. I'm sorry. Like I apologize, because you're like, I love this. I think
the perception of this show is going to be that it is Gundam related 100%. Right. And of course, the models and all of that are the glue that binds it. But truly, this is about getting to meet the people that inspired me, getting to sit down and have a chat with them, and bringing that to not only my audience, but your audience as well. I know that out of those 2,000 followers that you have since October, congratulations, by the way.
Oh man, thank you, man. It's crazy. I really, it's crazy. I have no clue how it happened.
They're so just as interested as I am in knowing kind of like what gets you going, right? So it's nice to kind of bring that to people and to be able to do that. So congratulations on that again, though, brother. Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks, man.
Job.
I mean, isn't that the power of podcast, though? Is that you can sit down with somebody that you would have never done before and have a great conversation about something you both love. I love that about podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to be the first one on your podcast journey.
You know what? It's fantastic. I love having
really is an honor. You're like, oof.
So where do you go from here? Like, what are you looking at?
So right now, currently, I am building, so I have the Haro next coming up after the Zaku. I have a Converge little figurine that I picked up that I took some nice photos of. They're the kind of pre-painted little guys. I have a Barbados on my page that I took a shot of. That is one of those. I can't stop buying them. I can't. It's like, I don't even have to do any work to them, and they just look so great. And I'm like, no, stop. You want to build. And I'm just like, yes, but how pretty is that unicorn Gundam? Like, you're like, so I'm going to try not to buy like every one of them, just the ones that I'm like, you are one of my favorite Gundams. I'm going to get a Converge figure of you. And then, so after all that, because what I do for schedule, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of how I do the Instagram, I do 4 posts of each of my Gundams. Every build that I do 4, unless it's a G-frame or something weird like my Magic Card Peter. Like, so I'll keep them limited to like 1, 2, or 3 posts. Like my G-frame Blue Destiny that I was just posting, that I only did 3 posts of, because I only paint align those, like, and clean off the nubs. It's like, it's not a ton of work. So I'm kind of just like, I did some fun things with it. I'll let it go. But I do 4 posts, with the last post being showing off my build photos that I was taking as I was building them. And then some behind the scenes sometimes. I don't really do that many because it's not too impressive when it's just 3 lights and a little sprayer and me laying in the dark.
It looks like it's a big production, right? But I mean, if you came to my room and saw directly over to the side of me, like you can't walk, right? I got to clear a path for me to get by.
Isn't that the point? The movie magic, like you're like, I'm creating an image. But it's like that's what I do for a lot of them, and then to break up in between, if I have a good like a haul from a shop for Gundams, I'll post that as a kind of journal of my Gunpla journey. I want everyone to know what's in the backlog, without having to be like backlog update every 2 weeks, and because it's quite out of control at the moment, and but also to be like, okay, that's when I can look back at my own Instagram and be like, okay, I bought that kit at Christmas time and I built it now, and that's kind of cool, where it's like, you got like the audience gets to go along with the journey of what I'm buying and building, but also it like helps me be like, okay, that wasn't in the backlog too long, I got that out of the backlog pretty fast, or I can be like, that one's been in there forever, that's just that's
sometimes. Absolutely. I got a master grade that I've been sitting on for, I think I bought it. The first one I did was New Verka. And I was just like, oh yeah. And I was like, I don't build anything other than master grade. No, I just do. Well, my goodness, what a commitment those are sometimes.
Right.
I have a
I haven't built a master grade yet, so I can't vouch for it, but I can't believe people do it all the time. I'm always
it's a fantastic, like, the build quality, right? And when I talk about, like, you were talking about the details, and one thing I think somebody who's not in this this hobby, they don't quite understand, is there is so much that goes into the build that's meant just for me. Right? Like, there's details on things that nobody else is going to see.
Gives the shit about, right? Like,
and they're not going to see it. It's me. It's things under things under things. But for me, my God, do I love snipping that off, cleaning off that nub, and looking at it and just being like, the detail on this, right?
Right. And the engineering is absolutely astounding sometimes. Sometimes you put a leg together and you're like, the amount of thought that just went into making how this leg came together is absolutely fantastic. Like, I love Lego, but it's very just like, we put another brick in a brick. What do you think?
Absolutely. Like, take rectangle and insert to rectangle. Like, that's how.
I mean, it gets really creative. I'm not shitting on Lego. I'm just saying fantastic that, like, brick. That's why this is a lot different.
You're bang on, right? You're taking non-rudimentary shapes and you're creating limbs and detail out of 3-dimensional strange objects, and it's a blast. I call it Kinder Surprise on crack.
Kinder Surprise on crack. We weren't allowed to have Kinder Surprise here in America. The kids were eating them. They were eating the toys.
Kids were eating the Kinder. Yeah.
Dude, what a surprise that was. I remember the day they came back to like American shelves, and they were kind of like, we're putting Kinder Eggs back out, but like the toys are unedible now. We made them big enough that like they wouldn't eat them. And you're like, why do we have to make this distinction? Like, just
I think it's the same reason why we got to make laundry detergent pods with warning labels on them, right? It's the same reason why
forbidden fruit.
Yeah,
the forbidden fruit.
And let me tell you, they're tasty. They taste like that gum I had that one time.
That's like I'm a big Switch gamer. I play a lot of Switch.
Yes.
And when the console first came out, and I know a bunch of people who don't know this, and so that's why I love telling people about it, is that the Nintendo Switch cartridges are covered in a spray that is supposed to like ward off dogs and babies from swallowing it. Yep. And it's one of the most effective things you've ever seen. Want to ruin your night? Go right now, pick up a Switch cartridge and lick it. It literally is this bad taste that just like a dead battery that like travels your entire mouth and just like ruins whatever you taste for the next like 30 to 30 minutes to like 4 hours. But like it's pretty bad, and it's like one of those things that you're like don't lick the Switch cartridges, but you know, you gotta try it one time. You gotta
try it. I mean, really, if somebody tells me that story, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm gonna go find my my copy here of Mario Tennis, and I'm gonna give it a lick. I'm gonna see what it tastes like.
Lick Mario Tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, any dream projects, like where you're going next? What's happening with your podcast next? Are you guys?
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I sorry, I never finished the building because I got so This is what podcasting is, right? Just getting distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many passions we share. It's hard to stay on one.
I am building a Gundam ground type SD cross frame. What are they called? Cross section. Cross silhouette. I knew it was an S. I was like, what is this? So the SD cross silhouettes. I really like them because they're beefed up SDs. You know, like they're actually really posable once you put the inner frame in, and the separated plastic is absolutely fantastic. So I've had a really great time building this one. I literally am on the weapons. I was like, as we were getting ready for the show, I was like, I better build Gunpla before I go on a Gunpla show. So
got to build Gunpla before I talk Gunpla.
So for like 2 hours before now, I was cutting and I got to the guns. I'm not very fast builder. I don't know about you. I'm not I was watching your stream and you were pretty fast, but not. I'd say we're about the same speed because I mean, I'm really not slapping them together like some people say they do. They're like, oh, I put that together in an hour. I'm like, how do you do that? Like,
nowhere near that. So if I'm doing one where I'm going to release a video on it, a build video, we tend to just clip them right off the runner, drop them all down, clean them up as a bunch, separate, organize, and slap together. Those actually go pretty quickly. But when I'm building for myself, I'm enjoying the manual. I'm enjoying the process. I'm not looking to rush through it at all. So for me, I'm a slow builder. I would call myself a slow builder. Like there's times where I did that live build yesterday, and I think sometimes I like don't actually work the piece for a couple of minutes. I'm just like spinning it around, looking at details. So for me, there's always going to be those ones that I want to build for content, and then there's the ones that I build for myself, right? The ones that I'm like, man, oh man, this is the one for me. So I'm glad that you know you're feeling that on this project, and I can't wait to see those photos.
Thanks, man. I'm excited about it, and I think after that it's either going to be I'm going to keep that SD CS train going and build one of these Gundams from the SD Gundam Generation Genesis games. They're strategy games on Switch and PC and PS4, I think. And I love them. I'm a big strategy game guy. I love, Fire Emblem, Advanced Wars. I mean, that's some of my favorite series. And so when you tell me that there's basically a Fire Emblem with Gundams and you play through all the Gundam stories in the UC universe, and the Gundam evolve like Pokemon, like you are literally like, oh, here's my RX-78, and then you evolve him up to like a Hainu and he's like destroying people, and you're like, let's go. It's a lot. It's a really fun game. I put like 90 hours into the game.
Beautiful.
And I still didn't. Some of the things are exceptionally hard. And so I didn't beat everything, but I did play through everything. I just lost completely in some of those last missions there. They were like, but like even in the first, like they're like, okay, here's the first edition. You play through Mobile Suit Gundam, and you're like, oh, I'm sure we're starting the game. It will be easy. No, they're like, no, Abaku's going to be as hard as balls. Do you think Amuro just pulled this off easy? Right. No, this was hard. And you're like, no, wait, hold on. And it's like, it's definitely some weird game design where it's like they try to like force you to only use the in one part of the map just the figures they provide you instead of the army you built up, which of course your army's sitting there like with 6 unicorns, like at Abaku being like, you guys want me to stop time? What do you guys want me to do? They're like ultra chatting up in the background. So like, I see what they're doing where they're like, no, this game would be extremely easy if you were just able to bring your like 5 unicorns in to fucking wipe out everybody. So we're just going to give you the units over there.
Isn't that one of the oldest tropes? I tell Tony, my wife, all the time. There's one thing I can't stand in video games is when I build a character up, man. I work hard. I like have this attachment, and then they take all of my weapons away. They take all of my items away, and they make me walk through like some area, and I'm totally constrained by just these rules of the game to lengthen and pad it. It kills me.
I know it sometimes could be like nice where you're like, okay, I'm the ultimate, like even with it's like very anime where you're like, I'm completely stripped down, but I'll still kick your ass. But then sometimes it just, like you're saying, it feels like padding, and you're just like, I didn't need, this could have been over, like it could have just been easy, like it didn't have to be this way. But those SD Gundam Generation games are great. I have the Phoenix from that, and the set, I'm gonna mispronounce this, but the Sesquet, and that's a mono-eyed Gundam, the only mono-eyed Gundam in the entire franchise per se. I don't know if that's exactly true, but that's what they say. It's a beautiful kit, and I'm thinking that's what's going to be my next one. Awesome. Podcast wise, I know. So every week we put out an episode. They're about like an hour long, and we kind of deep dive on certain topics. Kenobi's coming up. Kenobi's coming up in a couple episodes because Kenobi finished up, and we've been doing pretty much every Disney Plus show. But we also we were doing the AFI Top 100 Films. Like the American Film Institute.
Absolutely,
they put together like the top 100 films made by Americans, but in America type of thing. Stupid, but you're like, okay, it's a very definitive.
No, not stupid. Yeah.
Well, that is like very set. It's not. We were going to do IMDb's top 250, but that moves with audiences voting, so it doesn't really. It kind of shifts. So we were like, okay, let's do a top 100 that is like very set. We did the AFI, and we have Yankee Doodle Dandy coming up, which is quite the thing to witness. You're like, you're sitting there going, oh, I'm really liking this movie, and then you're like, and then there's a blackface scene. Everyone stop. You're like, no, please stop this. But then,
and it made the list.
Yeah, you're like, and it still made the list. Yeah. But it is a good movie. It's just, you're like, whoa. And then we have Blade Runner after that, which we're going to go into the different cuts of Blade Runner and what the differences are, and why, what makes this like final cut that Ridley just put out on HBO Max different, and and all that.
Well, and Ridley being one of my favorite directors of all time.
A legend.
Doing so much progressive in that, like the lens flaring that we saw in that, we didn't see that for another 25, 30 years before that became mainstream and everything. Right. And to watch his films it's breathtaking. And of course, I mean, Blade Runner, how do you go wrong?
He's got some misses now, but it's not, like not everybody can continue to be but he made the legendary films. Who cares? What?
I feel he's still got something left in him.
Oh yeah.
Like any other artist,
smoke in the can.
Not everything can be a hit, right? Not everything can be that like it factor. Some things are going to be misses, and that's part of just the growth of an artist. And I love that. So yeah, some of his films might not be the best, but like Tarantino, he's still, I'm a check it out. It doesn't matter.
He's still an artist putting down art, and it's great. I
don't know if I'm checking out a Terrence Malick film this year, but I'm definitely, I'm definitely there for Tarantino. I'm there for some of these guys that challenge me as a viewer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, awesome. So you have that coming up on the podcast, and any new projects on the go coming out this year? Is it something your fans can look forward to?
So we do have, and this is a little even weirder. we are going to do you've seen these podcasts before, horror narrative podcasts, like literally short film, but as a podcast. So It's going to be called The Warp Shelf Presents, written by me and my co-host Sean, because we went to film school. He's writing a book novel, like he's a writer, like we want it, and I love directing things, so it's like I want to direct this kind of short film that we don't have to have the whole production of a short film, but be able to get this like great story across. So we've been writing some short horror stuff, and we hope to be able to produce that by the end of this year. As kind of our like big art project at the moment, and I hope I can put that together. I hope I'm not shooting that off the hips, but we have some good stories put together, so I'm pretty excited about it. But basically, I want to keep making great Gunpla, kind of upping my skills. Like that's kind of what's the most addictive part of Gunpla for me, is that you learn new things constantly. It's literally a constant learning curve. It's like, if you want it to be, it is just constantly being like, okay, I've learned some of that. Now, what's this? Weathering? like that's what I'm heading towards now, is I bought the Tamiya weathering kits, and I'm kind of like, that will be a cool addition to my like kind of like outside photos, is weathering them up to look like they've been through something outside.
Absolutely.
And I kind of want to keep upping it, because there's so many great people in this community, they just constantly make you go, how, you're just like, that's amazing, blowing your mind, like Poom Toy Scope, I mean, of course, my boy Mean Mug out here, always
Mean Mug, loving Mean Mug.
Oh my god, yeah, he's one of those guys that brought me into the community in a way, and I really appreciate him for that, and so many other great people. But it's one of those things that I'm like trying to bring up my save so I don't like forget anybody, but like,
no worries.
You see people like AO Mecha making like fantastic, colorful photos, and then you have people like R69 Zaddy is doing amazing stuff and stepping his game up constantly. It's incredible. One of my favorite guys who really put like, he probably doesn't even know I exist, but one of those things that like I always am just like, that man is pushing what this photography of Gunpla is Fenaro Artworks. I'm pretty sure people have seen him all around. He does great, really colorful stuff. And of course, 41M Barra is one of my favorite outdoor photographers at the moment. He's one of those guys that you look at and you go, damn, I'm not even there yet, like I gotta get there, and that's what I really enjoy about the hobby too, is that like, it's very true in life that if you're the smartest person in the room, find a new room, and was one of the best things about, moving to eCast. I was doing, before that I was doing AV, and I was doing concert works, and I was doing stuff like Boston Calling, and I was, and I really loved concerts and live music and stuff like that. That's why I love doing live production with cutting cameras. But it's one of those things that I was definitely this. It's like I was the head there. It's like of certain things, like where it's like I was the smartest guy for this, and they would only talk to me for this. And it's like, but at eCast, it's like so many people inspire me all the time to be a better filmmaker, better, production person, better, at everything I do. And I feel like that's super important in a workplace, and then super important in your hobby too, to be like, holy smokes, look at the work these people are doing, like it's incredible stuff. And it makes you go like, well, how do I do that? Like, and that's the endless fun of this, is being like, how do I get that? How do I do that? And then you start being like, well, how do I emulate, Steven Spielberg? How do I do a Jurassic Park shot? How do I, like how you're like, oh, I'm doing a shot from Toriyama here, from Mobile Suit Gundam, like that's what you need to keep chasing is that like, can I replicate this artist's work so that way, you become your own art, I know it sounds ridiculous, but like it's like
very true, like you touch base on whether it's work, whether it's hobby, it's your life. If you're not growing, things need to change a little bit, right? You always need to be growing, you always need to be changing and embracing things in a different way. And I think that you changing a career or where you're working is an indication of that, right? Your mind, and I see it in your work,
right?
So I appreciate that, and I do see that you're growing all the time. And great shout outs. I have a couple of them coming on the show in the near future, so I'm excited to get to sit down with them. And
so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really do appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me,
again for being the first guest, and I'm going to give you the mic.
Thanks, man.
Plug yourself. You got any? You want to plug your podcast? Let's do it. You want to plug anything that you're going to work on in the future? Let's do it.
All right. So I got the stickers right here to show off I got the slaps in the hand.
Amazing.
So I got YupGundam. Go to YupGundam on Instagram. That's the only place. That's the only account. Don't fall for any scams. There's no other person. Just YupGundam. I am Yep Frank everywhere else, pretty much, on Twitter, on Instagram. And then if you want to check out the podcast, go to galaxyofgeek.com. So if you want to check out the Warp Shelf podcast, go to galaxyofgeek.com, where you can find my Gunpla reviews. I got a couple Gunpla reviews on there at the moment, actually written ones. I know there's so many great YouTube ones that inspired me, but I realized there wasn't many written down Gunpla reviews. There wasn't like actual in English. Yeah, of course there's tons in Japanese, but like there was no English. I wasn't finding any English like Gunpla reviews just written out, and I was kind of like, well, I'm gonna fill that hole. I'm gonna write that. I'm gonna start writing those. So I got 2, and I'm working on a 3rd review right now. And I mostly I think that I just can't compete with those YouTubers with the reviews. And it's nice when you're stuck at work and you can't watch a YouTube video and you can't listen to the music or something like that. Something's happening where you got to really pay attention, but not totally. So you can just, read it on your phone real quick, and I include all of my photos in there. Sometimes photos I haven't done on Instagram on there. So I don't do any work in progress photos on those reviews, but I do show off edited photos that I've done that didn't get it on Instagram. So that's a cool little like extra ad and kind of push to go read those reviews. Is like, if you want to see an extra photo or two, go check out that review. And yeah, so the Warp Shelf podcast, YupGundam, Yep Frank, and galaxygeek.com is kind of my plugs. I am regularly streaming often with my friends at the Ape Arcade. I'm not like an official member of that, but I'm on there a lot. Where they're right now posting on YouTube us playing Batman Arkham Asylum, which was really fun. We streamed it, and then they're putting it on YouTube right now, so you can watch them in like 14-minute clips on their Ape Arcade YouTube. And I mean, that's basically it's like I talked about Batman for 5 hours there. So if you want, if you need some like 5 hours, if you want some deep Batman and some jokes about Batman, that's some good things over there.
Awesome. Well, you heard it from the man here first. Frank, you got a lot going on. I won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate your time, and please come back and visit me again. You'll come back, right? You'll come back on the shore.
And
awesome.
Dude, anytime you ask me to come back, I'll be back.
I know the fans would love to see you, and I'm super interested in what's going on in the future with your podcast and everything else. So again, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you, and I wish all the luck in the world to this show.
Thank you so
I
much.
want another Gunpla show. You know,
Yeah.
like I love Off the Runner. A little shout out to another great show that I'm going to be on in a little bit.
Off the Runner, shout out.
I was on an episode of Off the Runner that's coming up in the future. Who knows when they're going to post that? But I love a Gunpla show because, like you said, it's fun to sit down with the creators you see every day online and see their artwork and to like actually see their thought process / their shelves. Is a cool time. You know,
absolutely. Well, I'll see you and talk to you very soon, my friend.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, everybody. Well, I thank you so much for coming in and checking out the show. This was our first one, and it definitely went very well. A little bit of technical problems there at the beginning, but what can you do, right? I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I also want to give a special thank to YupGundam. Appreciate him taking his time and coming by and talking with us today. I got a good idea of kind of some of the things that motivate him, some of the things that inspire him, and I hope you got the same out of that as well. I want to give a quick shout out to my boy here at SMU Toys. Mock buddy, I hope you're feeling better. I know you haven't been feeling the greatest. Hit me up on Instagram. We're going to talk a little bit more. And everybody else, just remember, it's been tough out there with the lockdown, okay? It's been tough with the shut-in. Be gentle to yourself. Enjoy the time that you have. And if you're doing a hobby with us, enjoy that. And just remember, you're doing a fantastic job. Come check us out next time.